The boundary between the Beatles' final chapter and Paul McCartney's emergence as a solo artist is far blurrier than history often suggests. Between 1968 and 1970, as tensions quietly fractured the world's biggest band, McCartney continued writing with the same instinct he always had, still assuming, at least subconsciously, that the Beatles would eventually shape these songs together. When the Beatles finally unraveled, a number of McCartney compositions were left suspended in time. Originally imagined as Beatles recordings, they later resurfaced on his solo albums, reworked, stripped down, or expanded, but still carrying unmistakable traces of the band's DNA. These were not discarded scraps or half-finished ideas. They were fully formed visions, songs that hinted at an alternate future for the Beatles, one where the group might have evolved naturally into the 1970s. Instead, they became foundational statements in McCartney's post-Beatles identity. Number 1. Backseat of My Car.
Sitting in the backseat of my car.
Backseat of My Car took shape in early 1969, right in the middle of the Beatles' most turbulent period. It bore all the hallmarks of McCartney's late Beatles ambition: sweeping dynamics, romantic idealism, and a multi-section structure reminiscent of A Day in the Life or You Never Give Me Your Money. At one point, McCartney considered bringing it into the Beatles' orbit, but by then, collaboration was becoming increasingly unrealistic. Creative unity had given way to fragmentation, and grand, studio-intensive ideas were often met with resistance. When the song finally appeared on Ram in 1971, it sounded like a bridge between eras. Produced with cinematic flair and emotional intensity, it proved that McCartney hadn't abandoned the Beatles' sense of scale, he simply carried it forward on his own terms. Many modern critics now view the track as one of the clearest examples of McCartney translating Beatles' ambition into solo freedom. Number 2. Junk.
Bicycles for two, broken-hearted.
Junk traces its origins back to the Beatles' 1968 stay in Rishikesh, India, a period that yielded an astonishing volume of acoustic songwriting. The song exemplifies McCartney's gift for finding beauty and melancholy in overlooked everyday objects, a theme that would resurface throughout his later career. Though demoed during the White Album era, Junk never gained momentum within the band. Its quiet introspection likely felt out of place amid the album's stylistic sprawl and growing creative competition. When McCartney finally released it on his 1970 solo debut, McCartney, the song felt perfectly at home. Its delicate acoustic arrangement and understated emotion matched the album's homemade, lo-fi aesthetic. In retrospect, Junk has aged remarkably well, often cited by critics as an early blueprint for the indie folk sensibility that would gain prominence decades later. Number 3. Another Day.
Every day she takes a morning bath, she wets her hair, wraps a towel around her.
By the time Another Day was written, the Beatles were nearing the end, even if the split hadn't yet been formalized. McCartney previewed the song during the Get Back/Let It Be sessions, but it never progressed beyond an informal run-through. The song's narrative, focusing on the quiet loneliness of an ordinary woman, was quintessential McCartney: observational, compassionate, and melodically accessible. Ironically, those very qualities may have worked against it in a band increasingly pulled toward rawness and confrontation. Released as a single in 1971, Another Day became one of McCartney's earliest post-Beatles hits, reaching the top 5 in multiple countries. While some early critics dismissed it as lightweight, modern reassessments recognize it as a finely crafted piece of character songwriting, one that reinforced McCartney's instinct for timeless pop even outside the Beatles framework. Number 4. Every Night.
Every night I just want to go out, get out of my head.
Every Night emerged in late 1960 during one of the most emotionally difficult periods of McCartney's life. The Beatles were effectively finished, legal battles loomed, and McCartney withdrew from public view, struggling with depression and uncertainty. Musically, the song sits comfortably alongside the reflective mood of Abbey Road. Its confessional tone and melodic restraint suggest it could have evolved into a fully realized Beatles track with harmonies and subtle orchestration. Instead, McCartney recorded it almost entirely alone for McCartney, 1970. The result was strikingly intimate, a rare glimpse into his vulnerability at a time when his public persona had long been defined by optimism and charm. Today, Every Night is often cited as one of his most honest early solo statements. Number 5. Teddy Boy.
This is the story of a boy named Ted. If his mother said, Ted, be good.
Teddy Boy also originated during the Beatles' Indian retreat in 1968. Rooted in folk storytelling, the song reflected McCartney's enduring affection for narrative songwriting and gentle, almost childlike themes, echoes of earlier Beatles character pieces like When I'm 64. The band rehearsed Teddy Boy extensively during the January 1969 Get Back sessions, and available recordings confirm that McCartney still envisioned it as a group performance. However, the song struggled to survive in an environment increasingly defined by friction. John Lennon showed little enthusiasm, and its homespun charm clashed with the project's supposed raw, back-to-basics philosophy. After the breakup, McCartney reclaimed the song for McCartney, 1970. Stripped of band tensions, Teddy Boy finally found its place, less as a failed Beatles track and more as an early declaration of McCartney's artistic independence. Number 6. Maybe I'm Amazed.
Maybe I'm amazed at the way you love me all the time.
Though widely celebrated as a solo masterpiece, Maybe I'm Amazed was written while the Beatles were still technically together. McCartney composed it as a deeply personal tribute to Linda McCartney, drawing emotional openness that paralleled John Lennon's confessional songwriting during the same period. There's no evidence the Beatles formally rehearsed it, but its dramatic arc and emotional weight suggest it could easily have become a major group recording. It's not difficult to imagine Lennon adding harmonies, or George Harrison contributing a soaring guitar line. In the end, its isolation worked to its advantage. Recorded almost entirely by McCartney himself, Maybe I'm Amazed became one of the defining songs of his solo career and remains a staple of greatest songs lists well into the 2020s, frequently cited as proof of his creative power beyond the Beatles. These songs occupy a uniquely compelling space in music history. They are neither fully Beatles recordings nor purely solo creations, but something in between. Snapshots of a legendary band dissolving and an artist reinventing himself in real time. Rather than marking a clean break, McCartney's early solo work often felt like a continuation of unfinished Beatles conversations. Listening today, it's hard not to imagine an alternate timeline, one where the Beatles stayed together just a little longer and these songs became part of the band's evolving sound. Instead, they became milestones of Paul McCartney's solo journey, quietly carrying the spirit of the Beatles with them into a new decade and beyond.